friends, welcome to the Point. In this session, we are discussing about the Vice President of India. The Vice President of India, he occupies the second highest office in the country, and he is accorded a rank next to the President of India in an official warrant of precedence. The office of a Vice President of India, it is modeled on the lines of American Vice President. How is Vice President of India elected? How does the election procedure is being conducted in our country? Let's have a look. The Vice President's election, like the President's election, is not elected directly by the people, but it is elected by an indirect election, and he is elected by the members of Electoral College. For Vice President's election, the Electoral College members will be both elected and nominated members of the Parliament, whereas it is different for the President's case. If you have already learnt about the President, and then you can come to know that the Electoral College is different for President as well as Vice President. Why the State Legislative Assembly members are not taking part in Vice President's election? Because when we come to the Vice President, his normal functions are to preside over Council of States, and it is only on rare occasion, and that too for a temporary period. He may be called upon to assume the duties of a president, and that is the reason, in order to make an election simpler, only the elected and nominated members of the Parliament take part in Vice President's election. What are the qualifications to become a Vice President? The person should be a citizen of India, and he should have completed 35 years of the age, and the person should be qualified for election as a member of Rajya Sabha. The person should not hold any office of profit under union government or state government or any local authority or any public authority. The nomination of a candidate for election to the office of a Vice President, it must be subscribed by at least 20 electors as proposers and 20 electors as seconders. Every candidate, one who is willing to take part in the Vice President election, he should make a security deposit of 15,000 rupees in the Reserve Bank of India. Oath or affirmation. Before entering into the office, the Vice President has to make and subscribe an oath or affirmation that he will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India, and he would faithfully discharge the duties of his office. The oath of the office to the Vice President, it is administered by the President or some other person appointed on behalf of President. If suppose a member of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha becomes a Vice President, at that time he should vacate his seat in that house on the date when he enters upon the office as a Vice President. Vice President, he should not hold any office of profit. Term of office. Vice President term is for 5 years and from the date on which he enters his office. Anyhow, he can resign from his office at any time by giving his resignation letter to the President. Note here, President has to give his resignation letter to the Vice President, and Vice President will give his resignation letter to the President. A formal impeachment, it is not required for the removal of Vice President. He can be removed by the resolution of Rajya Sabha, which is passed by an absolute majority. That is a majority of total members of the House, and it should be agreed by the Lok Sabha. Before making any resolution on the Vice President, a 14 days notice has to be sent to him. If not, any such resolution cannot be made. The Vice President can hold his office beyond the term of 5 years also until his successor assumes the charge. Vice President is also eligible for re-election. He may be elected for any number of terms. A vacancy in the Vice President's office, it can occur on the expiry of his tenure of 5 years, by his resignation, on his removal, by the death of Vice President, and when he becomes disqualified to hold the office or when his election is declared void. When the vacancy is going to be caused by the expiration of the term of the sitting vice president, before the completion of the term of a vice president, a fresh election has to be held. And if the office falls vacant by his resignation, removal, death, or in any other case, and then the election to fill the vacancy, it should be held as soon as possible after the vacancy occurs. The newly elected vice president, he remains in office for a full term of 5 years from the date he assumes the charge of his office. Disputes in the election of vice president. All the doubts and the disputes which is related to the vice president, it should be inquired and decided by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's decision will be final. If suppose the electoral college was incomplete, that is, there are many number of vacancy among the members of the electoral college and the vice president election is being held, in such case the election of vice president, it cannot be challenged on the grounds of vacancy in the college. Powers and functions of a vice president are twofold. That is, vice president acts as an ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, and in this capacity his powers and functions, it will be similar to the power of speaker in the Lok Sabha. Vice President of India, he resembles the American vice president who also acts as chairman of the Senate, that is the upper house of the American legislature. Vice president acts as a president when a vacancy occurs in the office of a president due to president's resignation, removal, death, or some other case. While acting as a president or discharging the functions of a president, the vice president, he will not perform the duties of the office of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. During this period, that is, while he is acting as a president, the duties of the vice president is performed by the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha. Let's have a small comparison between Indian vice president and American vice president. The office of Indian vice president, it is modeled on the lines of American vice president, but still there exists a difference. For example, think the president in America has resigned. In that case, the vice president of America, he becomes the president, and he remains in that position until the term of the resigned president. But that is not the case in India. The Indian vice president, he does not assume the office of the president when it falls vacant for an unexpired term. He serves as an acting president until a new president assumes the charge. Emoluments. The Constitution, it has not fixed any emoluments to the vice president. The vice president, he draws a regular salary in his capacity as the ex officio chairman does in the Rajya Sabha. In 2008, the Parliament increased the salary of a chairman of Rajya Sabha from 40,000 to 1.25 lakh per annum. In addition to this, a vice president is entitled to daily allowances, free furnished residence, medical, travel, and other facilities. But these allowances cannot be enjoyed by the vice president if vice president becomes an acting president. Why? Because at that time he receives all the emoluments which is given to the president. Hope you have got an idea about the vice president. In the next session, we'll be discussing about the prime minister. Thank you.